resolve armed conflict?
There is such a body, sir.
Is there a body of law that's called basic criminal law?
Yes, sir.
Are there differences between those two bodies of law?
Yes, Senator.
From an American citizen's point of view, do your constitutional rights follow you? If you're in Paris, does the Fourth Amendment protect you as an American from your own government?
From your own government, yes.
Okay. So, if you're in Afghanistan, do your constitutional rights protect you against your own government?
If you're an American in Afghanistan, you have constitutional rights as against the U.S. government.
Is there a long-standing...
That's long-settled law.
Isn't there also a long-settled law that it goes back to the Eisentrager case? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, Johnson versus Eisentrager.
Right. That American citizens who collaborate with the enemy have considered enemy combatants.
They can be. They can be. They're sometimes criminally prosecuted, sometimes treated in the military.
Well, let's talk about can be. I think
under Supreme Court precedent.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a Supreme Court decision that said that American citizens who collaborated with Nazi saboteurs were tried by the military. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think a couple of them were executed.
Yeah.
The FBI investigating accusations Vladimir Putin and the Russians were trying to sway the election.
The system, folks, is rigged. It's a rigged, disgusting, dirty system.
The FBI says states should be on guard to protect against computer attacks that could jeopardize the integrity of their elections.
Tonight, new evidence that the federal government has ignored a threat to the integrity of our elections. A group of Venezuelan businessmen have bought an American company that supplies electronic voting machines and counts the votes. But your government didn't even review the sale. A voting machine company, critical to this country's election count, and they can't tell you whether or not the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States reviewed it or not?
They have no answer for us. And
these are the most arrogant, incompetent, bureaucratic idiots.
Smartmatic, based in Boca Raton, provides voting machines in local elections in the United States, like this election in Chicago in March. But Smartmatic has only 5 to 7 people working in Boca Raton, Florida. Smartmatic is a labyrinth of international holding companies owned by Venezuelan businessmen. The Smartmatic and other voting machine companies are private companies. They have proprietary software they can call a trade secret. Electronic voting experts with extensive experience say it's nearly impossible to verify if a proprietary system is tamper-proof.
All of the voting system vendors in the United States are private companies. The problem is the closed-door proprietary nature of the process. The closed system we have right now makes it extremely hard to find out what's going on. And that means that should a thief get in a position of power, we would never know.
Some voter watchdog groups and others in Congress are calling for a full review and say the ownership of all electronic voting companies should be reviewed to determine if it poses a risk to U.S. elections. The U.S. Treasury Department today would not confirm or deny if a so-called CFIUS review is underway on Smartmatic. Watchdog groups question why U.S. voting machines would be under the control of citizens of another country, especially a country whose own election process is highly suspect.
We believe this is a national security issue. There is no way that companies belonging to non-U.S. corporations should have access to our election.
In the case of Smartmatic, there are a number of unanswered questions. That's why I wrote to the Secretary of the Treasury and asked them to review the ownership. It's offshore, it's murky, no one seems to know who owns it. Certainly our government.
We're loving this one, but most people probably wouldn't. A room full of hackers, all trying to hack into voting machines.
You can possibly make it accept a fake card or accept any card, so you could add your own votes.
These are supposed to be the latest machines. They're still used in elections, and they're running ancient software. I think that, like, if somebody wanted to, it would be pretty easy to fake an election.
Less than a couple hours with access, and they're already figuring out ways to break in and play pranks. But it gets more serious.
So you could leave the security key into it and still inject.
I feel like I'm the only one here that hasn't found a vulnerability. It's not what you think. They've all been invited here to demonstrate just how vulnerable the tech we rely on for our elections can be. The experiment is the brainchild of Jake Braun. He's a former security advisor for the Obama administration.
You know, with everything that happened in 16, what we're trying to do is get this industry to mature from a cybersecurity perspective, so you don't have folks saying what they are now, which is things like machines are unhackable or databases are air-gapped and can't be changed.
It's not clear if any actual machines were infiltrated in the 2016 election, and no one has suggested any physical votes were changed. But intelligence officials agree that Russia was able to meddle with other election-related systems. This inspired Braun and the organizers of this year's DEF CON hacking conference to collect over 30 pieces of voting-related equipment, including voting machines and a mock elections office, and tell a group of hackers to try any means necessary to break into and reverse engineer them. And it didn't take long. Several were compromised within the first hour and a half.
So if you're a voter in America, we're likely hacking the machine that you vote on. There's a few dozen of these machines and also electronic poll books. In some states, people check in on an electronic device as opposed to a paper book.
How you cast your vote varies from district to district. Some places use this machine, some places use that one. Some counties only vote on paper ballots, but almost all of these machines are still in use somewhere in the United States. Some of the hacks might not work if your district has updated the software on the machines, although many don't.
We can go in and hack this lock within 10 seconds. You gain access to the operating system. We could actually remove this and clone this particular USB. We could go back and start looking at and reverse engineering what's on this image and determining the various ways that we can impact this particular operating system.
No one will believe you. You guys, no one will believe you?
If they see XP, they're very happy.
Hey, good Lord. Did he just say good Lord? I like it every time it rings to Windows XP, you hear people groaning behind us. The machines you use to cast your vote aren't the only point of entry for attackers. Other election-related systems, like campaign networks and registration databases, are also at risk.
The vulnerabilities at the voting machine level are very localized, and what we're trying to simulate out here is the entire back-end network.
There's a lot of mischief these guys can do without ever actually having to physically get access to a machine. If they were just to go in and mess up the voter file, you could have millions of people showing up at the wrong precinct, or showing up at the right precinct, but the name's wrong in the poll book, and then all of a sudden, now they don't know where they need to go.
Intelligence officials have stated that Russia was able to influence the election without the need to penetrate actual voting machines by breaching DNC computers, accessing staffer emails and opposition research. The Department of Homeland Security also found that they targeted election-related systems in as many as 21 states.
If you wanted to go in and specifically manipulate vote counts on every single machine in America, that'd be really hard to do.
Right.
But you don't need to do that to have an impact on the election in 18 either. You only have to flip a couple Senate seats to have an impact on U.S. Congress.
If it can be done, there's a chance it's already being done.
If a nation state, a criminal organization, if they would start doing this, they would have stolen databases, they would have stolen machines, they would have manuals, they would have studies.
Right.
They have started with nothing a few hours ago. The uphill battle they have fought to get where they are is incomprehensibly more difficult than what real criminal would need to do.
Do you think that nation states, real criminals, already have an idea of some of the vulnerabilities that are being discovered today?
Absolutely. It's all documented. It's in public documents. It's not hiding anywhere. You can go actually to Secretary of State websites and download and learn hundreds and hundreds of vulnerabilities.
By the end of the weekend, all of the available machines had been hacked successfully, including an electronic poll book system that still contained the personal data of over 650,000 Tennessee voters in Shelby County, information that hadn't been properly wiped before the machines were resold. The county's administrator of elections told CNN Tech that they are looking into the incident, and that as far as they're aware, the information exposed on the poll book is already publicly available for request to the Board of Elections. When reached for comment, manufacturer Election Systems and Software told CNN Tech, unrestricted access to a voting unit in an uncontrolled environment is not a legitimate test. We've extended an invitation to the organizers of DEF CON, inviting them to visit our home office, meet our developers, and engage in a collaborative discussion regarding voting system security. To date, we have not received a response. Dominion Voting Systems did not respond to our request for comment. The plan is to eventually present the event's findings to Congress.
What the election industry needs to do is start working together with our national security agencies to share threat information, understand when the bad guys get in, and then get them out when they do. If we don't get our act together quickly, this could be one of the biggest threats to American democracy in our history.
Do you believe that right now we're in a position where the 2020 election will be hacked?
Oh, without question. I mean, the 2020 election will be hacked no matter what we do, even if we're as more successful than I even think we could be in securing our elections. The question is, will we be able to identify the attacks before they can have an impact on the election through things like audits of vote counts? And can we get the bad guys out before they can do something bad?
In Georgia, early voting turnout is high. The presidential race is a toss-up, and both Senate seats are in play. So naturally, the political world is nervously watching what voters here will do, while in the world of computer science, they are tensely tracking what the voting machines will do. Georgia's vote tallying system is a complex assortment of laptops, iPads, magnetic cards, touchscreens, printers, and scanners.
A big pen is a round stick, medium.
That's all University of Michigan graduate student Matt Bernhard needs to break into this voting machine.
There we go.
These machines are in use in 20 states. Behind the door is the prize, the memory card where votes are stored.
If you were so inclined, you could come into the voter booth to vote, pop out the memory card, put your own in, install some malware.
Not only that, but we were able to develop a voting machine virus that would silently spread from machine to machine, going from a single point of infection to compromise an entire county, maybe even an entire state.
All right, here are the results from the electronic voting machines. Ohio State wins 131 to 108.
There's a good reason we computer scientists are paranoid. It's a golden age for hackers.
Our highly computerized election infrastructure is vulnerable to sabotage and even to cyber attacks that could change votes.
This is the same electronic voting machine used in Georgia, in parts of Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, and even in swing states like Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania. Georgia's kind of a petri dish.
Alex Halderman is a professor of computer science at the University of Michigan.
There's a lot more we have to learn about Georgia's election system, and that's going to help inform how to better secure elections, not just in Georgia in November, but across the country for years to come.
He's among a handful of independent election security experts getting unprecedented access to the inner workings of the state's $107 million voting system rolled out earlier this year.
By analyzing the structure of the QR codes, I've been able to learn that there's nothing that stops an attacker from just duplicating one, and the duplicate would count the same as the original barcode.
Also taking a deep dive, election security white hat hacker Hari Hursty.
They have set up a complicated system which is centralized and doesn't seem to have any safeguards. You never want to rush something which is mission critical, and this is mission critical, into production without proper time of testing. That's really one of the ways bad actors are finding the vulnerabilities to exploit, is looking for honest vulnerabilities and finding out if they can be weaponized, if they can be exploited.
During testing, election workers found half the names of the 21 candidates for Senate intermittently disappeared from screens during the review phase. Alex Halderman and his team at the University of Michigan conducted a mock election to see if voters are likely to catch mistakes on the printouts. Only 7% spotted a deliberately planted error.